Welcome to the Burgundy and Gold Knuckleheads podcast. You know who's riding with me? It's my main man, Reggie. What is going on, Reggie?
Here, everything's good, man. Here we are once again, coming off of Sunday, coming off another game and coming off another victory, Ken. So this is becoming a little bit of a habit in old news, man. So I need to hear my music, man. Let me have it.
Here you go. That's what you're looking for, right? That's it right there?
Yes, sir. Hey, it doesn't get old, man. It does not get old. And but at the same time, it's becoming very very common around these parts, man, that we're coming in with these W's. I mean, Ken, we're 7-2. We're 7-2, Ken.
Yeah, even when you look at everybody's, we've talked about this briefly, but we are so far above expectations.
For sure.
Right. Even if we were winning 6-7 games total for the year, I know there's people that if we played, you and I could have very well fit in this category. Watch Jaden Daniels play well and grow throughout the season. The team have some young talent that's playing together, coming up short and only getting 7 wins for the entire season. Under the right circumstances, we could have been happy with that.
Absolutely.
And we got our 7 wins. We're officially a notch past halfway, and we're ecstatic, right?
There's no stopping us, man. There's no stopping us, Ken.
Well,
and you make the point, man. The point last podcast is that if you had took the over on the Vegas odds before the season started, man, you'd be in the money right now, right?
Yep. You certainly would. You certainly would. That was 6.5 points. We're officially 6.5 wins, and we're sitting at 7. So, yeah, after 4 or 5 weeks, you knew that you were going to be collecting on that money. So, I might be retiring next week with that big payday that I should have gotten. But
yeah,
I didn't know that bookie. I didn't know that bookie.
You'll be here. You'll be here.
So. Yeah. But Washington walks away with a win today over the New York Giants. It's a sweep, right?
It is
2-game sweep, 27-22. The Giants tried to make it interesting in the towards the end of the game, but Washington, by the beginning of the second quarter, they kind of controlled the game. Even with the good things that, if you're a Giants fan, even the good things that the Giants were doing, Washington was still controlling the game at that point.
Well, they were, but the way they were controlling the game early on was basically running the ball, no passes. And although that was
from the Giants' perspective, yes,
from the Giants' perspective, and although that was working, there was no way you're going to play 4 quarters of football that way. And so at some point they were going to have to do a little bit more. And I don't have the stat here in front of me, but I know that at halftime, Daniel Jones had -8 or -10 yards passing. And it's like, as a team, and it's like, there's no way that they could just run their way to a victory, right? And so at some point, whether they were going to change it and try to pass, or Washington was going to do something defensively to kind of force them into passing, they were going to eventually have to pass their way back to the game. But that touchdown by Terry over Banks right before the half was pretty much the game changer at that point, right? Because they knew we were getting the ball coming out of the second half, but at a minimum, regardless of what was going to happen, the Giants was going to have to change their game plan where they just couldn't just run the ball, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they came out, man. They were running, and we couldn't stop them.
Oh, well, to your point, the Giants had 142 yards in the first half, right? Their one drive, I think they had either one pass or 2 passes in the drive that weren't long passes, but it was a 9-minute and I think 32-second or something like that drive. They had 142 yards rushing in the first half. They ended with 164.
Right.
So they had another 22 yards rushing in the second half. Now, granted, part of that I think Washington made some adjustments, and part of that is because Washington was consistently up double digits through most of the second half, having them pass the ball a lot more. Jaden Daniels at halftime was 9 for 11 for 113 yards, and he basically, in a roundabout way, doubled the attempts. 22 pass attempts total for the day. 209 yardage wise for 2 TDs. And, Scary Terry today, his nickname shouldn't have been Scary Terry. It should have been TD Terry. He was 2 catches for 2 touchdowns.
With only 3 targets. The entire game, he only had 3 targets.
Yeah.
And caught 2, and they both were for touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. And so, man, it was one of those games where you look at the stats and you get one picture, but when you watch the game, you come away with a different picture. When I was, prepping for this and I was looking through the stats, it was amazing how even the game was statistics wise.
Right.
Jayden surpassed Daniel Jones 209 yards passing to Daniel Jones 174. Not drastic there. Daniel Jones threw for 2 touchdowns, but so did Terry. You look at time of possession because again,
so did Daniels.
I'm sorry. Daniels and Daniel Jones, they both threw for 2 touchdowns. So again, not a big difference in yards for each. And keep in mind, we just pointed out Daniel Jones had negative yards in the first half, but yet he finished, not very many yards short of what Jake Daniels had. Then you look at time of possession, right? They were running the ball, and it was only a 4-minute difference in time of possession between the two teams. New York had 32 minutes and Washington had 28 minutes, right? And again, they started out rushing the ball. And as a team, looking at the numbers here, they ran for a total of 164 yards. To your point, most of it came in the first half, a little bit in the second half. And Washington, as a team, ran for 149 yards.
Right.
So again, you look at the numbers, everything looks very, very, very close. But yet, watching the game, Washington was truly, really never in jeopardy of losing that game until again the Giants made it close toward the very end there. But I was never worried. Never worried about that game.
Yeah, and I guess if I'm going to be a little bit critical, as I look at everything, we only scored 2 field goals in the second half. And I know you're up and you start running the ball and do a little bit ball control and everything. But again, you had 1 field goal in the third quarter and a field goal in the fourth quarter, and that's all you scored. Now, at the end of regulation there, you could have punched it in for a touchdown if you wanted to. It was 1st and goal with a minute and a half and no timeouts. At the 1-yard line, they decided to take a knee a couple times just to run out the clock instead of rubbing it in their nose. But again, I would have liked for Washington to have at least put up a touchdown in the second half. One of those 2, a touchdown and 2 field goals, a field goal and a touchdown, something like that, just to keep the rhythm going, to keep the offense going. And they still scored 27 points. Don't get me wrong. But again, you were winning 20, or you were up 21-7 at halftime, and you only put up another 6 points. If you would have scored a touchdown on your first field goal, which wasn't the first possession in the second half, that alone would have put the game out of reach and kind of taken the fight out of the Giants.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I don't know that I could argue with the need, if you will, to get more points or anything, but it just goes to show you how the floor has been raised, right? In years past, we're averaging 15 points a game, and here we are, one of the top scoring offenses in the league. We scored 27 in a win, and yet we wanted more, right? But I looked at it more as Washington was never in jeopardy. I think they played to the game, called the game in the way that it was to secure the win. A la, they could have punched it in at the very end of the game, but they chose to just take some knees and run the clock out. They could have punched the ball in. I think when they realized they got up and the Giants were not able to come back, did they dial the offense back a little bit and just try to do ball control and run the clock out? Perhaps. I don't, obviously I don't know what Cliff's game plan was, but I thought maybe they just played ball control, which is, kind of like playing keep away at that point.
Right.
And maybe there was no need to kind of just go all out because again, everything you do, you put on tape. And at some point you have to be thinking about your next opponent. The next opponent, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are going to be coming into Maryland coming off of a bye week, right? So more of their offense they put on tape, it just gives Pittsburgh a little bit more to think about. So maybe they were just trying to keep some things there. The other part why I wasn't too worried about it was a division game. And division games tend to be close no matter what. And so with that being the case, if it wasn't Cliff down the bag, was it just simply because it was a division game and you tend to you tend to know each other a little bit better? And that was a little bit why the offense wasn't able to do too much in the second half, because you have to give credit to them, because we know the Giants are not a good team, but it's not because of their defense. It's more because of their offense. And so defensively, they were still in the fight, playing hard, and that was just us playing a real good defense. And they get paid to play too. But at the end of the day, 27 points and what I can figure a garbage touchdown by the Giants toward the end to make it respectable. I personally didn't read too much into the final score of the game. It was just good to see us move the ball. It was good to see us score some points and not have what we saw last week in the win against I'm drawing a blank, man. Who did we play last week? The Bears. The Bears.
How could you forget that game? Come on, Reg.
Bro, I don't know. Forgive me.
I know.
Forgive me.
Yeah, it is. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. I think, compared to last week's win and the remarkable the way that it was, and even the hype going into last week's game against Chicago, it took a day or two to come down off of that, right? To get focused and say, hey, you got to close the door on that win. It's time to look forward to the Giants. This week, I think it's going to be easier to turn the page, and tonight they're ready to start looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we talked about earlier, as you were talking there, I kind of looked up something that just drew my interest. And it's changed to show the way that we look at things. There was a point in the season where bad teams, and we were there last year, the last few games, 4 or 5 games, you start talking about draft order, right? You're like, oh, we're third. Oh, if we lose this one and they win that one, you start rooting for teams to win or rooting for teams to lose to improve your draft order. And you got to hit on that pick, right? It's not just being there; it's making the right pick. As of right now, do you care to place a guess on where Washington would pick at this very moment after this win?
After this win, I would say we'd be picking 18.
29. 29th.
Really?
That's where we are as far as our record and how much better we are. Now, there's some teams that have lost 2 or 3 games that we may or may not think that are better than us, right?
Okay.
But as of right now, at this moment, if the season were to end, we would be picking 29th. Considering last year we picked 2nd, man, that is night and day. That is night and day. And we've got this game here coming up. We've got Pittsburgh coming up in 7 days, right? Between now and Pittsburgh, there's one more thing. We got less than 48 hours until the draft deadline drops. And
Trade deadline.
Trade deadline. I said draft. I apologize. Trade deadline. Any chance that we're going to make a trade, in your opinion, at this point?
Well, before I give my take on that, obviously, Adam Schefter tweeted yesterday that kind of got the football world talking, and that was players have told their agents that they want to be traded to the Washington Commanders, right? And everyone's talking about it because let's be honest, man, that is a huge turnaround from where we were just a year ago. And for free agents, mentioning Washington as a designation is complete opposite, because before it would be, if I'm getting traded or if I have a chance to go, take Washington off the list. All right. Now here we are. We're a prime destination for where free agents and players want to be. That being the case, I don't think they're going to make a trade. Right. I truly don't think Dan Quinn and Adam Peters is going to make a trade. I think we will be major players in the free agent market this offseason, given the amount of cap space that we have and the fact that we found a quarterback and there's going to be some holes we can now plug in along with drafting. But no, I don't think that those guys are going to give up the draft capital. I think they're going to continue to try to with their game plan, and that is built through the draft and supplement through free agency. So unless there's some situation where there's a point of no return, where they have a disgruntled player and the organization wants to trade him, we want to do right by the player, then they don't want to send him in the division or the conference, and you start knocking off teams, places, and possibilities that you can send them to, and Washington is one of those places that he's willing to go, and that means we're getting said player on the cheap, then maybe. But other than giving up a lot of draft capital for a big name free agent just to come in, potentially be a rental, or maybe sign to a big long-term contract, I don't think they do it, man. Now, would I be okay if they did something like that? Of course, because I trust what these guys are doing, in the building. But do I think they will? Nah. I'm sure they're sitting back feeling pretty good that they are a premier destination that players want to be. But it's like, I'll talk to you in February.
Yeah. And I don't disagree. I think if there's a trade, I think if you look at the team and our strengths and weaknesses at the moment, the most likely connection that we would have would be with a cornerback, right? Most of the other positions, not that we can't get better, but if there's a glaring hole, they were like, we'd like a better player at this position, an upgrade. Across the board, I think most people's first pick would be cornerback. But to your point,
I don't disagree. But the question was, do they make the trade? Do they make the trade? I
agree.
And I think the answer is
but
no.
I would follow up. Yeah, I would follow up with that and say that if the only way that Peters does this is if we walking out of the deal, and how ESPN and USA Today, they grade these trades. Washington's going to walk out with an A plus, and the other team is going to walk out with a D or F, right? To where we're just getting over. They want to get rid of it because of maybe they'll take a 5th round draft pick, even though it's a 2nd round quality player, but they want the pick and they want to move on from the whatever salary. And we're like, hey, we got him for a couple of years for that. Yeah, we'll take that on. Give up next to nothing.
It's going to have to be a Trent Williams type deal, right? There's this drama. You're going to get the player gone. You want to trade him. His team. The trade value is kind of low. Whatever the case may be. Otherwise, we're not doing the deal.
Yeah, I don't see that either.
And I agree with you that if they were to do it, meaning I'm wrong in what I suspect happens, and they actually make a trade, I would agree that it's probably going to be on the cornerback market.
Yeah, and Washington managing their salary cap, we know they have money, a good bit of money for next year, the 2025 season, they still technically have a little over 23 million this year. So if there was somebody that had a cornerback typically a very good cornerback, man, I'm stumbling over my words here, is in
You're
the
excited.
14 to 20 million dollar range, right? If you have them the rest of this year and next year, you can kind of absorb part of that, or maybe pay some of it, a little bit more of it up front, so you have your full salary cap next year. You've got that money to be able to absorb a little bit of a hit if that cornerback or whatever position is a more expensive player. I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think we're going to be making any moves, but that would be the scenario that I foresee any move being made if we were going to make one.
Yeah.
And when you look at all, sorry to interrupt, when you look at all the rumors of players here and there that are out there to possibly be moved, it's funny that here the Commanders are a playoff team, contending team at the moment, and they're not tied to any of the players. They'll show this team and that team, and the Bills and Miami and this team or that team. None of them have the Commanders tied to it. Even when the closest one was Adams, because of the Jaden Daniels connection. That was like 24 hours and that was gone. You're like, nah, he's not going to the Commanders,
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, so maybe the trade deadline looming, Jeremy Chin got the memo because, man, he played his butt off today. Now, granted, they were heavy on the run, so he probably had to come down and do a lot. I mean, he led the team in tackles. I think it was 13 or something like that. And then he leveled some hits today, man. That dude was showing up all over. Yeah, he was showing up all over the screen today in today's game. But we talked about it at the bar. Our good buddy Drew kind of mentioned it a little bit, and we talked about. Excuse me. Hang on, let me grab a drink of water. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say, but Drew's always throwing stuff out there, right? Some of it is pretty good. I know Drew listens. Some of it it's out there and it's wacky. Drew will get a heated conversation going, and he has his opinions just like we all do, right? You can substitute Drew for somebody else who happens to sit at you at the bar. They'll make some great points, and then they make one, and you go, man, where are you coming out with that? And I promise you, I've seen you and Drew and other people at the table look crazy at some of my comments. And I mean, there's some fabulous ideas that I come up with once in a while, but y'all shoot them down quickly. It hurts my feelings a little bit, but I deal with it.
Yeah, I guess. I guess. Well, shout out to Drew.
Shout out to Drew.
Drew's a longtime friend, longtime listener, and he gets things going. A lot of questions. Sometimes wacky, but sometimes they make you think about it.
Absolutely,
and things of that nature. So we appreciate our guy Drew. But anyway, so back to the game here, man.
What was his question or the thing that he brought up?
Oh, just like that, I lost my train of thought, man. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. Hang on, go for it. Let me think about it here. I forgot that I was about to bring up something for Drew.
Well, Drew, see, we're gonna go ahead and blame this back on Drew because he throws so much stuff out there that like, man, I don't even know which goofy or genius topic to talk about. Right? This one is genius. The next one is goofy. The next one is genius. The next one is goofy. Now,
it'll come back to me. Just like that, we got sidetracked, and I forgot what Drew said. Now,
see, we start talking about Drew himself, and his point is just out the window. So, what can we do? What can we do? But yeah, we'll end up having when we do our next podcast preview in Pittsburgh, we'll see at that point if there are any other free agents, right? We both agree that we don't anticipate to be any. It seems like free agency is the NFL used to have almost no, I'm not sorry, freeze. I mean trades. The NFL used to almost have zero trades during the season. And that's changing. There's a trend of more trades. It's not this isn't like the baseball or NBA trade deadline, but with that amount of movement, but the NFL is starting to pick up some trades and sees value in that compared to 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah, whether it's trading on draft night with trading the picks, teams moving up and down the draft board, or seeing moves before the trade deadline. In the past few years, the NFL has been not shy to do this. It's whether it's the younger GMs that are out there or whatever the case may be, because before a lot of this would happen in the offseason. But to your point, teams aren't afraid to pull the trigger, trade a guy mid-season, man. They'll do it in a heartbeat. And of course, we've seen it umpteen times on draft night where teams quickly and easily trade up and move up and down the draft board. So,
well, that happened to us this year, right? We got out of our second round pick and slid back and actually made a trade with somebody in the conference.
Yeah,
made the trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you just, again, it's different times, different strategies of what you got, how you have to build your team to succeed in the NFL.
Yeah. But here we are, man. Again, say it and it sounds good, man. We're 7-2, and barring a major collapse, this team makes the playoffs. Right? I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it, Ken. This team's going to make the playoffs. But with that being the case, who would you say would be the team MVP at this point?
That's easy. It's almost like who's the runner up, right? The MVP is without a doubt Jayden Daniels.
Is it? Is it though?
Man, he's trying to play devil's advocate because
is it?
Yeah, the upcoming NFL Rookie of the Year will be the MVP of the team itself, without a doubt.
But they say football is the ultimate team sport. Is it the O-line? Is it Brian Robinson?
There are multiple people who have contributed to the success, but none higher than number 5, Mr. Jayden Daniels, Rookie of the Year 2024.
Okay.
Do you have anybody else in mind that would even compete?
As a player, I'd say probably not. And as I asked the question, I mean, I know it's somewhat silly, but it was kind of like, we have to recognize that Jayden Daniels and his play has been the difference in wins and losses, right? And to think how, ourselves included, we're questioning whether or not you should try to build around Sam and some of the other things. To see what an NFL franchise quarterback looks on your team, it looks different, right? Sam has some mobility. Well, Jayden has mobility. But yet somehow he's getting out of situations that Sam Howell or even Taylor Heineke were not able to get out of. And I know the OC was a little bit different in things, but even right now when there's pressure on Jayden, he seems to be quick enough in the pocket. He can make one man miss. He can make the blitzer miss. He can do some things because let's be honest, I know the O-line has quote unquote played better, and they have, but there's also been some times where the O-line gave up missed the block, but then Jayden gets outside and makes a play using his legs, throw away, or even make a pass down the field. And we're no longer talking about the missed block by the O-line. We're like, okay, man, he threw it away, lived to see another down, or he used his legs and picked up the first, or he used his legs and got outside and was able to make the play, which resulted in a first. And again, we're no longer talking about the missed block. We're talking about how he made that guy miss.
Right.
You go back and you look at the film or you look at the play and you realize he had to do that because of our line. So again, but with Taylor and Sam and some of these other guys, they turned into sacks, right? And so he has made a difference. And now having our guy and seeing what that looks like, there's levels to this, right? There's
Yes.
there's levels to this, man. And I will say it again, Sam Howell may go on and play 10 years in this league, but he's no Jake Daniels.
Correct.
Right? This guy's making a difference, and he has made the difference as to why this team is being successful. He extends drives, he's making plays, and just to know that this kid is only going to get better, right?
Right.
This kid is only going to get better,
Right.
and so I'm excited to see where this is going.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything he's doing this year it's so far above and beyond of what we anticipated. His composure, his play, the kid has ice. He has ice in his veins, and every couple of years you get a quarterback that has that. I mean, last one from LSU, Burrows is probably in that. I mean, Burrows as a rookie took his team to the Super Bowl, right? He just could handle the pressure, elevated the talent around him. I would say one of the things that I have noticed, and I noticed it today also, the running backs have done an excellent job picking up blitzes this year. I don't know who it was that picked up. I don't know if it was Austin Eckler, but it was a cornerback. I believe it was a cornerback or safety that came shooting up to blitz, and he got popped. I mean, he got popped about a step and a half in front of Jaden Daniels, and you could hear the crack on TV as he picked up the blitz, and then Jaden Daniels paused for a second and fired and threw the ball.
Yeah. But the focus on this, again, is a win against the New York Giants, division opponent. We swept the New York Giants. There was the goofy stat, and this is not what I was going to talk about Drew, but Drew pointed it out. And they showed Jake Daniels was the first rookie in NFL history to have ever swept the New York Giants. I thought it was a goofy stat. I'm like, it doesn't get you anything, but he thought it was interesting enough to point out. And I was like, yay, I guess.
It's hard to believe, right? That all the rookie quarterbacks that they face now, granted, it's going to have to be out of the NFC East, right? But
that goes back to when the Cardinals were in our division, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. At one point, there was 5 teams in our division. For the youngsters out there, yes, there was 5 teams in our division. The Arizona Cardinals.
Well, as when they were St. Louis Cardinals.
They were, even when they were in Arizona, they were still part of the NFC East.
Yeah.
And because they moved a couple of times to St. Louis, but nonetheless, yeah. But I thought it was just kind of a goofy stat. Like, it doesn't buy you anything other than it's just one more thing that you can say Jayden has been the first to do. But it doesn't buy you wins on the field, right? And that's what this is about. This is about winning games, and that's not one that's going to get you a win. He won, we swept him, but we have bigger fish to fry, man. The team that we are showing ourselves to be, we have to be able to win against teams like the New York Giants. But the next stretch, as we get into some podcasts here in the near future here, but our next three games are going to be very telling, right? We have Pittsburgh at home. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's in Philly.
Correct.
And then we have the Dallas
Thursday night
Cowboys.
game.
Yep, Thursday night game. And then we have essentially like a mini bye that will right before I think we play the Dallas Cowboys at home in Maryland. That's it, man. So those next 3 games, woo, my man.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be the big deal for us, I think, coming up. Beating the Giants, the Carolina Panthers, and teams like that, we should be doing that.
Right.
But when you play teams a little bit higher caliber, because let's be honest, the Cowboys will look a little different. By the time we come play them, they will have gotten healthy, probably gotten some players back. I know Dak got injured against the Falcons, and I think CeeDee Lamb got banged up. I don't know the extent of the injuries, but you'll have the defensive guys, Michael Parsons, and some guys coming back, and they will look a little bit different. And again, it's a division game, and then we have the Eagles and things. So these next 3 weeks for me, I will have an idea what this team is gonna truly look like this season. To know how for real. Are we just for real? Or are we for real?
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, we're talking about 3. You know, the Cowboys are down right now, so I don't know at the moment if we can consider them a playoff team, but definitely at the beginning of the year, even a few games into the season, they were looked upon as being a playoff contender. You know, some people had them winning the division, but you got the Steelers now who look like they're a legitimate team. They were kind of struggling trying to find their identity on offense with the quarterbacks, but now they've seemed like they've locked in with Russell Wilson, and obviously Philadelphia is, you know, right behind Washington, and you know they're trying to get on top, just like we're trying to maintain. So there's going to be 3 tough games back to back, to your point, and you know, the rest of the season, even beyond that, you know, the last 3 games are kind of the same 3 games, right? The last 3 games are Philadelphia and the Cowboys again. Oh yeah, and by the way, you got to instead of saying against Pittsburgh, you're sliding in Atlanta.
Right.
So our next 3 games and our last 3 games are pretty much identical as far as, you know, playing some tough talent out there.
Absolutely, but we ready for it because it's different around here now, Ken.
It is. What's our record again, Reg?
We 7-2. 7-2. Who would have thunk it?
I like it. I like it.
Not me. Not me.
Yeah. But like I said, we will be following up on a preview of the game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh travels well, so when you listen to the game, don't be shocked if there's a large Steeler presence, right? They've been winning for a long time. Nationally, they have a big following, and even, you know, they're not that far from DC. So they've got a lot of
right?
easy for them to travel and easy for them to, you know, a lot of them in the area, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll see them. You'll see the towels, right?
Without a doubt, you'll see towels. You'll see a lot of black, and
black and yellow.
And black and yellow, however they are. But ultimately, we want to see them on the losing end as Washington pulls it away. But we'll cover that game. We'll go over some strengths and weaknesses because, you know, the Pittsburghs, they're a different team this year than some of their traditional teams. But they're still putting it together. But we'll have a podcast.
But I tell you what, you beat that team coming off of the bye week, a hard coached, hard playing Mike Tomlin team.
Yep,
looks like Russell Wilson is playing loud in that team offensively to play different, to play better. And if Washington wins that game, the national attention that we're getting now, I think, will be elevated to a level I don't think we've seen in a long, long time. Because
it's another elevated test for us, right? You talk about different levels at players. This is one of a legitimate playoff team, contending playoff team that we're going to be matching up against and seeing how we do
with the defensive player of the year, you know, and TJ Watt and stuff. But we'll get into all of that on our next podcast and everything. But hey, at this point, man, it's another victory. We'll take it because we're 7-2, and we'll be ready. We'll be ready, man. Let's do this. So appreciate everyone for tuning in. Appreciate everyone listening. As always, we welcome your feedback. And until next time, y'all, peace out.
Peace out, knuckleheads.